Okay, if we can, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the March 12th, 2020 meeting of the Jefferson City Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Chris Jordan. I'm the chairman of this commission. I would like to remind everyone to turn off their electronic devices, phones and whatnot, and then I would ask everyone, as commission members, to make sure to turn your microphones on when you're speaking and speak into the microphone, as well as the audience when you come up and testify, speak into the microphone as well. We would start with introductions of the members, so we'll start down here. Emily?
Emily Fretwell.
Michael Lester.
Jack Deacon.
Penny Quigg.
Beth Sweeten, city staff.
Dale Vaughn.
Hank Vogt.
Blake Marcus.
Eric Barron, planning manager.
Anna Nanisky, city planner.
Ian Zollinger, planner.
Sonny Sanders, planning.
Ryan Wolford, city staff.
Shane Wade, city staff.
Thank you all. Procedural matters, the city code authorizes 9 regular members and 3 alternates. Alternates are designated to vote upon the absence or disqualification of regular members. A quorum of 5 members or alternates is necessary to conduct business. Tonight we do have 2 regular members, I think, absent. Michelle Mahoney and Dean Dutoy. And right now we are missing Bunny Tricky Cotton. Okay. We do have a quorum present this evening. Will there be any members who will be disqualifying themselves from any voting items? Jack, you will be disqualifying yourself. Which item would that be, sir? P2003, 1800 block of East McCarty Street. It's a preliminary and final PD plat of Cedar Ridge subdivision. When we look at that case, I'll ask you to step down in the audience if you would, sir. So the voting members this evening are Michael Lester, Dale Vaughn, Jack Deacon, excluding the case we mentioned, Blake Marcus, Penny Quigg, Hank Vogt, and Emily Fretwell, correct? All right. Next, we'll have a call for cases. If you're here for that case to present, would you just raise your hand and let us know you're here? Our first case is case number P20002, 1200 Linden Drive. It is a rezoning from RA2 to PUD and a preliminary PUD plan. The request was filed by the Catholic Charities of Central and Northern Missouri as the owners to rezone 2.2 acres from RA-2 high-density residential to PUD planned unit development and a preliminary PUD plan to remodel and expand the Scheikels building to establish it as a community service center. Is there someone here to represent that? Thank you. Our next case would be case number P20003, the 1800 block of East McCarty Street. It is the preliminary and final plat of Red Cedar Ridge subdivision. It's a request filed by James Loggy, the property owner, for a preliminary and final subdivision plat of 10.23 acres consisting of 22 single-family residential lots. Is there someone here to represent that? Thank you. Ian, is there any request for continuance?
No.
Okay. I do believe we've had a request to reorder the agenda.
Yes.
The request is to move case number P2003 up to our first case.
Yes.
And then slide the other cases down. Do we need to vote on that, or what's the procedure on that?
Yes, you'll have to vote to amend the agenda.
Okay. First, I would think we probably need a motion, sir. Need a motion for that?
Yes, you can't do anything without a motion.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to reorder the agenda.
I move to reorder the agenda, moving case number P20003 to be item number 6, and moving item 6, which is case number P20002 down to being item number 7.
We have a second? We have a motion and a second. I will ask city staff, Bunny Tricky Cotton just arrived. Are you comfortable with her voting on the reordering since she came in late, or should we do that without her?
Since the motion was made as she was walking in, it's fine.
Okay. We're reordering the agenda, Bunny, so based on that, we'll let you vote. So, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 0. Okay. Ian, if you would, please inform us about the hearing and the order of testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to briefly describe the procedures of the Commission. The proceedings of the meeting are being recorded, so please step forward to the microphone when you speak and give your name and address for the record. The standard order for each case is as follows. After the introduction of the request by city staff, the applicant or their consultants will provide information on the request. The opening presentation by the applicant shall be limited to 10 minutes unless additional time is granted by the Commission. The applicant shall have 3 additional minutes for closing testimony if requested. We will then ask to hear from from supporters of the request. We will then ask to hear from any opponents of the request. We will then ask to hear from anyone else who wishes to speak on the request. Testimony shall be limited to 3 minutes each unless additional time is granted by the Commission. City staff will then make their recommendations on the request. In order to reduce the time necessary to hear an application, references to printed material, including staff reports, applicable findings, shall not be read into the record unless directed by the Commission. The Commission will close testimony from the floor. The Commission will then discuss the proposal, then publicly make its determination with reasons. The form of the motion shall be positive, that is, the motion shall be made to accept the request as presented or with modifications, stipulations, or conditions. A final vote will be taken with ayes in favor, nays opposed. The chairman shall announce the results of the vote, specifying the number of votes cast in favor and the number of votes cast against. The following items and documents are entered as exhibits for all items under consideration at this meeting. The city code of the city of Jefferson as amended, the comprehensive plan and land use map, copies of applications under consideration, a list of property owners to whom notices were sent, the affidavit of publication of the public notice in the newspaper, copies of drawings, plans, and or renderings under consideration, letters of memoranda from staff reports, minutes of proceeding, correspondence or other materials submitted by the public or the applicant, the rules of procedure for the Jefferson City Planning and Zoning Commission. These items are public record and available for inspection in the Department of Planning and Protective Services or through the Office of the City Clerk. Please be advised that any items that are presented, distributed, or otherwise received pertaining to the cases under consideration become property of the Commission. This includes any photographs, drawings, petitions, and letters. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ian. We'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as reordered.
I move to that we adopt the agenda as reordered.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 8 to 0. City staff has provided us the minutes from our regular meeting of February 13th this year. So if you would, take a look at those, and when you're ready, I will entertain a motion or we will discuss any changes.
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 8 to 0. We do have some communication this evening. We have one email. It is from the Executive Director of the Housing Authority for the City of Jefferson. It is regarding case number P2002, 1200 Linden Drive. It is the rezoning and the PUD plan. all commission members can look at that, but I believe from what I'm reading is that they are in support of that request. Is that a fair statement? Thank you, Ian. We'll move on to new business and our public hearings. We will start with the first case, which we are reordering. We will start with case number P20003, 1800 block of East McCarty Street. It is a preliminary and final PUD plat of Cedar Ridge subdivision.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to point out the location of the property. The property is located here, just about 1,000 feet or so east of the intersection of Eastland Drive and East McCarty. The property is zoned RS2, single-family residential. And here is a closer air photo of the property. I've changed the orientation of the property to match the plat and how it appears. North is this way, this direction. The property has a street located on it that is being vacated. It's Morningside Drive. So here we have the preliminary plat of the property. The applicant is proposing to divide the property into 22 buildable lots and 1 reserve tract, which is not a buildable lot. The preliminary plat would create a new street called Nash Court. There will be sidewalks on one side of the street. Sidewalk is proposed to be on the west side of Nash Court. So here to the south, or excuse me, to the west side, on the bottom of the street here as it appears. There are 4 different flag lots that are associated with this plat. Located here, these 2 are flag lots that have flagpoles extending to Nash Court, and here as well, with flagpoles extending to Nash Court. Mail service will be provided by a cluster mailbox at the end of the cul-de-sac, located here. Notable lots would be lots 1, 9, 10, 11, and 14 and the reserve tract. Lot 1 and as well as lot 21. Their access, here's lot 1 and here's lot 21. Their access will be restricted to Nash Court only. They will not have driveway access to McCarty. And lot 22 will be required to have a turnaround on their property so that they drive forward out of their property and do not back out onto East McCarty Street. Lots 9, 10, 11, and 14 are subject to a riparian corridor because of the creek here. So there is a 25-foot setback from that creek, as well as an additional 35 wide setback from the stream for a total of 60 feet. The lots are subject to riparian corridor standards, that they will not be able to remove naturally occurring vegetation within the corridor, and cannot alter it from its natural state. Reserve Tract A, which is located here, will be transferred to the city of Jefferson, the purpose of which will be used to construct a stormwater basin to comply with stormwater regulations. Here is a closer up version of the preliminary plat, so you can see. A note is made here that the Nash Court is intended to extend beyond. If development occurs on the neighboring property, the road will need to be extended onto that property. Here's the final plat, displaying the right-of-way and the lots as described earlier. and a closer-up version of the final plat. And the applicant's consultant is here to answer any questions, and I am happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Ian. Shane, do you have anything to report at this time?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for planning staff and Ian at this point? Okay. If there's someone here who'd like to come forward and represent this case, I would ask you please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Hello. Okay. Nash Court is currently designed with a cul-de-sac at the end of it, but we have extended the right-of-way to the property line so that in the future, should someone, adjacent property owner, decide to develop the property to the east, Nash Court could be extended in the future. The bulb of the cul-de-sac itself would likely stay, but then that street connection would come off of that, and the bulb would basically serve the driveways for lot 8, 10, and 9. Depending on where the driveway for lot 9 goes, the driveway would potentially have to be relocated or adjusted in the future, but that would be up to whoever that future developer is. So, Reserve Tract A, as Ian said, is a stormwater detention and water quality basin. There's a fairly large creek that runs along that south side of the property. We've kind of got the detention basin towards the back side of those few lots, and then squeezed in between there and the creek. So that would, take into account the riparian natural corridor, and then have a place for all the stormwater discharge to go. It would also serve as water quality, so we'll have the city's standard water quality inlet in there to let the stormwater basically settle all the particulate matter out before it gets discharged to the creek. We are diverting the majority of the runoff from the development into that detention basin. Basically the 4 flag lots would continue to drain to the east to the adjacent property, and we've run some calculations on that, and the runoff that's going to the adjacent property is actually less than what is currently going there right now. Right now, everything from where basically from where the street is to the east is all going on to the adjacent property, so we'll be intercepting that, taking the majority of it to the detention basin, and reducing the runoff to the church to the east. I think that covers all of the highlights. I guess maybe the one other thing I'd add is between lots 21 and 22, there's an existing property owner that is not part of the development. She does not currently have sewer service, so as part of the development, they're getting her hooked onto the sanitary sewer system. So she's very excited about it, and I will be happy to have that taken care of as well. So I would answer any questions.
All right. Does any of the commission members have any questions for the applicant? Applicant's consultant.
Just curious, the double arrow on the map, it's a double arrow that goes right down the middle of the lots, like 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yep.
What is that?
That is a stormwater channel, and if you can kind of see on the second sheet where the contours are, basically the entire property falls from the west property line all the way to the east property line. Whenever the street goes in, we'll wind up cutting those pads out. So basically, that ditch will collect all the runoff that comes from the eastern or the property to the west, intercept that before the lots, kind of run it around the outside of the subdivision, keeps it out of the storm sewer system, and gets it out to the larger creek to the south side of the property. So there's another one of those along the front sides of the flag lots, and that's where we're intercepting that runoff from the rest of the street, and then diverting that to the detention basin.
Paul, I have a couple questions. One is, and maybe it's a question for city staff, but on the flag lots that run along, the sides of a couple of these other internal lots, will those driveways going to the flag lot homes, will they be paved?
Yes.
So they will be paved back to the garage or whatever.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And those are 35-foot poles on each, and I think typically I want to say that his driveways have probably been on the 15 to 18 feet wide.
Oh.
The 35 feet on the pole is the minimum that's required by the code. So there's still quite a bit of space left in there, and then you've still got the 10-foot side yard setback on the adjacent lots as well. So
the 10-foot side yard setback would affect the driveway as it comes up there, or would not?
Would not. Okay. No. So you've got 35 feet to put we'll say an 18-foot wide driveway in. So you still got 10 feet on either side, more or less, and then you've got a 10-foot side yard setback on the adjacent house.
I know with Turtle Creek, and Mr. Loggy's done a nice job with those homes out there, very, very nice development as it's come along. But I do know they've had some drainage problems out there with, probably the property being as flat as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you feel that, going back to Mr. Vaughn's question, the channelization that you've shown on here is going to probably help address that a little better?
Well, at Turtle Creek, the biggest issue was with the natural creek that's come through there. We had to raise up some of those lots quite a bit because of you see the creek when it's dry, and it's this nice babbling little brook, and it's pretty, but then whenever we get an inch rain like we did this morning, then it becomes a raging torrent. So we made efforts there to make sure that we planned the elevation of those houses high enough so that they wouldn't have any drainage issues. And we did do some of the backyard drainage swales, trying to collect some of that water off of the houses and get it away from the houses and more directly into the storm sewer system. The lots that are going to be against the creek on this one are going to be significantly higher than the creek. we've planned those to have walkout basements in them, and even with that, they're probably still on the range of 8 to 10 feet above the level of the creek. So,
Yeah, I kind of looked at the contours. That was my question. It looks like, Turtle Creek is a lot of slabs. I mean, I think they're all slabs, darn near.
well, and that's the other thing that he's found in his market is that nobody wants basements.
Yep.
They're all moving out of larger homes, and they don't want to deal with steps and those type of things. So, and Turtle Creek, he's had some challenges in trying to force slabs into lots that would more naturally lend themselves towards walkout basements. So here, I think we've kind of identified, especially the four along the creek, and maybe a couple others, those would be walkout basements, and there's really just no other way to do it because of the topography of the site.
Last question, and I'll give it back to any other commissioners, but as we know that we've done these developments in the last few months to year, that the post office is making us do the cluster boxes now for postage for mail. Just curious where that box is located. I didn't see it.
So it is right here in the back of the cul-de-sac, and that's kind of
there I see it now.
Yeah, that's kind of a challenge we always run into because nobody wants the box in their yard.
Yep.
And nobody wants to drive to the back of the subdivision to go get the mail. In this situation with having two lots that are going to be fronting on McCarty Street and not wanting to create a traffic impact, we didn't want to put it at the opening of the subdivision. So we kind of picked a spot where it seemed like there was the least impact to one of the houses and least impact to the traffic. So
yeah, I think it's in a great spot.
It's just become one of those necessary evils that nobody likes, but there's really nothing we can do about it. So we just try to do the best we can with it.
Yeah, no, I think it's in a great spot, and people can drive up and get it and keep going. Hopefully, not create too many problems. So, Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners for the consultant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to those of you in the public. We do it in threefold. We do first for those who would like to speak in support, those who would like to speak in opposition, and then those who would just like to speak. So again, I'll start with, is there anybody present who would like to speak in favor of this request? Please come forward. Seeing none. If there's anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to this request, please come forward. Seeing none. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this request? Please come forward. Okay, at this time, I will close testimony. Who's giving the staff report? It says Anna. No? All right. Ian.
Yes.
Staff
Thank you,
report,
Mr. Chair.
please.
The preliminary and final subdivision plats meet the requirements for subdivision plats as outlined within the subdivision code. The street network provides for the future connectivity options to neighboring properties. Staff recommended some recommendations that were already addressed in revised plats that were submitted to the city. So staff recommends approval of the Red Cedar Ridge preliminary and final plats.
Okay, Ian. Everything's addressed that you need on the plat?
Yes.
Well, congratulations to you and the consultant. That doesn't happen very often, but that's nice. Mr. Wade, do you have anything you'd like to address?
I've just got a couple things. I think Ian and Paul pretty well covered most of what I had. In regard to parking, parking will be prohibited on the easterly side of Nash Court and allowed on the side that the sidewalk's proposed. Fire hydrants, streetlights, and other utilities have been proposed in accordance with city standards. And then as far as the technical revisions from the Public Works Department, the minor technical revisions for the plat and the grading and erosion control plan have been addressed by the consultant. My hope is tomorrow to have the remainder of the improvement comments, which we don't have a whole lot of, back to the consultant for final approval for the remainder of the improvement plans. And we would also as well recommend approval subject to any minor comments on the subdivision improvement plans.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for city staff? Seeing none from the commissioners. Mr. Sampson, are you aware of the items that Shane is talking about, and you're fine with those? Shaking his head, he's fine. Okay. With that, we will move on to if someone would like to make a motion.
I move to approve the Red Cedar Ridge preliminary and final plat, subject to the comments and technical corrections of the Planning and Engineering Division.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries 7-0. It will be forwarded to the city council, correct?
Yes.
Okay, when will that date, please?
April 20th
April 20th,
at 6 p.m.
6 p.m., this room, unless changed, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to announce that Mr. Deacon is coming back up to join us, and we'll be voting and participating in the rest of the meeting. Jack, thank you for stepping down during that time. We will move on to the next case. It is case number P20002, 1200 Linden Drive. It is a rezoning from RA2 to PUD and a preliminary PUD plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead.
The location of the property is located here, just off of Linden Drive and the intersection of Edmonds. Stadium is over down south here. The area of the property is zoned RA2 residential. And here we have a 2015 air photo of the property. This property was recently split off from the surrounding property earlier this year and is its own separate piece of property. So here we have a site plan for the property. The applicant is proposing a rezoning of the property from RA2 to PUD to be able to propose a number of different uses included within their plan, including administrative offices, a small chapel, a warehouse, health screening and counseling rooms, a food pantry, and a demonstration kitchen. The applicant is requesting an underlying zoning of C1 neighborhood commercial for the purposes of determining other uses. I'd like to point out some of the new elements to the site. The building already exists as the Scheichel Center. The applicant is proposing an addition to the building here, as well as a possible future addition here. The applicant is also proposing a 2,000 square foot storage building or warehouse located here. With this site in PUD, the applicant is proposing a new parking lot here, as well as an entrance off of Edmonds. Look at here. The PUD plan also includes sidewalk along the frontage of the property. The applicant and their consultant are here to answer any questions. I would be happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Ian. Shane, do you have anything at this point?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for city staff at this point? Okay, is there someone here who would like to present this case? If so, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. I'm Brian McMillan with Central Missouri Professional Services, 2500 East McCarty Street. And also here this evening is Mr. Dan Lester. He's the Executive Director of Catholic Charities of Central and Northern Missouri. And I believe John Landwehr is also here. He's one of the board members. Is that correct? Anyway, so the Scheichel Center, I think if you grew up in Jeff City or familiar with the community, you've kind of known about it, kind of hidden back there. But it's always, I remember as a kid, I played basketball there, and then here recently we used to go to plays and whatnot when Capital City Productions, I believe, was using the upper level. But I think that use didn't really fit the neighborhood, but the Housing Authority has split this off and has sold it to Catholic Charities, and they're going to use it to kind of fit a need in this neighborhood, I believe. And just a general uses of the facility, I think the lower level is going to be a food pantry, I think similar to the Samaritan Center. And then we're adding on a warehouse to the front of the building, and if you look at the handouts, I got kind of some visuals of what that's going to look like adding on. We've asked for, on the preliminary PUD plan here, for additional future additions just to keep from coming back should this get approved, and then a possible building on the lot in the future should additional warehouse space be needed. But the upper level then would I think serve some community needs of some counseling or medical needs and whatnot, and I think Mr. Lester could expound on that if needed. But anyway, as far as the site goes, the original intent was to use the driveway off of Linden Drive, the kind of how you get to the if you were going to a play now, how you enter the site, and the Housing Authority had given us easements to access the site. But we got to looking that this site's going to need to have semi-trucks delivering food and on a regular basis, and I don't think it was going to fit that real good driving those trucks through there. So we looked at putting a new entrance off of Edmond Street, and so that's what we've ended up doing. So we have a new entrance off Edmond Street, and we've kind of made the site open to be able to maneuver trucks around. And so everything, that happens with the food pantry, which is probably the busiest part of the facility on a regular basis, will be on kind of the north side of the building. And so the trucks will be able to come in, maneuver, and back in and unload and whatnot. So, and then, people coming to get food will come to that lower level and be able to pick up their supplies. So anyway, trying to think of anything else. I know there's a question about stormwater quality. I'm actually working on the final design right now, and we're looking at putting an underground detention system in that would detain the water and also clean the water. So that's kind of the direction we're going now. I'll be happy to answer any questions should you have any, or if you have any more questions of Mr. Lester, that if you have questions about how the facility is going to be used, we can answer that.
Thank you, Brian. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Brian? Thank you, sir.
Good.
Mr. Lester or Mr. Landwehr, would you all like to make any comments, or are you good? Come up, please. If you would, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. Dan Lester, Executive Director with Catholic Charities of Central and Northern Missouri, 2201 West Main Street here in Jefferson City. Just wanted to say that we're thrilled at this opportunity to be able to provide compassionate health and social services to some of our most vulnerable residents here in Jefferson City. We know that if we take a look at the surrounding neighborhoods, especially given the density of low-income subsidized housing authority units right within walking distance of this building, we really feel like this is a space that could be of great benefit to those folks who may otherwise have challenges accessing services. We also are really happy about some of the partnerships that we feel like we're going to be able to put into place with this, whether that's SSM, Elias Catholic High School, Trinity Lutheran. There's just a number of different community partners who are coming together around this. So more than happy to answer questions about the actual service provision and what the plans are for the space, but just wanted to put that on the record. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Mr. Lester? Thank you for your testimony, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll move it back into the audience. At this time, again, we will go through the three processes. The first one will be, is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this request? Please come forward. Seeing none. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this request? Please come forward. Seeing none. Lastly, is there anyone who would like to speak on this request? Please come forward. Seeing none. At this time, we will close testimony. Ian, do you have a staff report for us?
Yes. Staff recommends approval of the proposed rezoning and preliminary PUD plan. The rezoning from RA2 to PUD allows for the request to use the requested use without rezoning the property to a commercial district, which does not fit the context of the surrounding zoning and is site-specific. The property is located in the neighborhood that it intends to serve to allow for a use that fits the area. The preliminary PUD plan meets the standards that are required for the proposed use.
Thank you, Ian. Mr. Wade, do you have any comments at this time?
Just briefly, as far as infrastructure, existing sewer and utilities serve the property. The current access, as Brian had indicated, is from Linden Drive. Sidewalks exist along Linden Drive and also the eastern portion of the eastern side of Edmonds Street. As far as stormwater quality, Brian had covered that in regard to the final design incorporating stormwater quality. A new proposed entrance is shown from Edmonds Street. In regard to sidewalk, there is a sidewalk that's proposed along the frontage of Edmonds Street. Seeing as that this was a pedestrian connection, a project that seemed to be that pedestrian connections would be fairly important to the project, we had made Public Works had kind of made a recommendation in regard to an area. It's basically right at almost the intersection of Edmonds and Linden Drive. We still feel probably that after looking into the transit locations, we've got a transit bus stop there, also in front of La Salette Apartments, and then also up near Hyder Apartments. We'd still feel like that a connection would from what's being proposed to that intersection would be important. Our hope would be that that could occur with the initial phase of the development. If not, certainly we could hope, if possible, that maybe with working with the Housing Authority, that there could be a future connection made there, maybe with any of the future projects that they're looking at as far as improvements in the future. That would still be our recommendation if possible. In regard to streetlights and fire hydrants, those are all pretty well existing in the neighborhood as well. And as I'd indicated, I think all the other technical items have been addressed on the site plan as well. So we would recommend approval and hope that if we could maybe show that sidewalk as a future, if that would be entertained by the Housing Authority or by the applicant. Just seems kind of like it would make sense to go ahead and make that connection either now or later if possible. But I defer to the owner and the applicant of the frontage, because they do show the sidewalk along the frontage of what's being developed currently.
So that I'm clear, what you're asking, Shane, is you're asking for them to extend the sidewalk to the south along Edmonds Street to the corner of Edmonds and Linden, correct?
Work with seeing as that piece there is the Housing Authority, I don't know that we can require that, but I would think since it would serve the Housing Authority, I know we would like to see that connection being made. So, whether it would be now or maybe in the future, if, the project expands, working, I don't know if, I haven't had any conversation with the housing authority, so I don't know, but I mean, certainly makes, in my mind, a lot of sense. There's about 20 foot of frontage remaining there, and so in the future, maybe that connection could be made if the other portion is put in now. I'd defer to the owner and the applicant, or the applicant and the owner of the property that fronts that, which would be the housing authority, to make that final decision. But most people, like I say, the transit stops are up the street, so those folks are going to be able to walk to the facility, no problem, from what I'd call in front of I believe it's La Salette Apartments there. So this would strictly be just a connectivity issue for anybody maybe walking from the eastern portion of the page on the aerial. And again, there is sidewalk along the eastern side of Edmund Street as well. So.
So again, I'm going to ask you the question, Shane. You're asking us to ask the applicant, because I don't think anyone from the housing authority is here this evening unless I'm wrong, to ask them / require them to build a sidewalk on property they don't own. One is, I do realize that there's probably public right-of-way along there.
Right.
Tell me if I'm wrong too, but isn't it called the Jefferson City Housing Authority?
Correct.
And don't they fall upon underneath the umbrella of the city of Jefferson? No? Completely separate? No ties?
Right.
They're a federal organization.
Okay.
And I guess, like I say, I think it would be something that they would have to work out with them. So it's just strictly a connection issue. If it was a site plan that would be reviewed administratively, probably making that same comment to the consultant as well. So,
Mr. Chair, if I
back to
may.
your comment at this point, no one that you know of has addressed this with the housing authority before this meeting. You have not. Okay. Okay. Eric, you want?
Yes,
to
if
say
I may. And so it's a fairly short section of sidewalk. I mean, at a staff level, when we look at this, we think it just makes sense that while construction forces are mobilized to go ahead and make that extension. However, I don't know that it's necessarily anything that has, that is under the authority of this body to place as a requirement on the approval of the PUD plan. There's a possibility I'm incorrect in that statement, so I'll quantify it by that, but I don't think that we're coming to you with a request with a staff request to condition approval upon a 20-foot extension of the sidewalk. It's more of a respectful request by staff to, for the applicant to consider this short extension. There is within the city code regarding sidewalk construction some administrative ability, because there's sections of the city code that are administered by typically department directors are given the authority to make certain administrative decisions. So there's a little bit of an ability for an administrative decision to require an extension of sidewalk. Whether or not that would be required in this case, I don't think that discussion has been held in detail at the city staff level. It's typically something that would show up during a site plan review, which in a PUD plan case is a final PUD plan, which is an administrative review by city staff after it's gone through this body. So I don't necessarily think that the sidewalk issue is something to be debated at this level, but it sure would be nice if the applicant, would consider go ahead and making that short extension. I think that's what we're trying to say here.
I completely understand what you're getting at, and I understand the possibility of the need for it. One is I'm a little concerned that we've come up here and it doesn't sound like we've addressed it with the applicant or the people that actually own the property before we even got here. So I'd stress to you guys on that, if we're going to ask for it, I mean, these gentlemen here, they may agree to it, but, the housing authority or a private individual may say, I don't want that on my property. They take liability in having that on there. My question would be, to that is, 20 feet of sidewalk, I don't have any clue what that would cost, and they'd have to bear the burden of that, I'm assuming, as well. So I just, as a courtesy to applicants going forward, and even the property, whenever somebody came back and said, well, the city required to do this without even asking. I don't think that's super fair on our part.
Well, and again, my recommendation is that we support this request. It's not a condition. I think it's just, if they could take a look and see if, I know there's been some discussion with the Housing Authority on other issues, so if it could be added to that list or whatever, certainly
I don't foresee the
Yeah.
Housing Authority and most people having an
Right.
issue with it, but I just
Sure.
kind of, anyway. I guess at that point, I will ask the applicant if they would like to address the concern of the city, whether or not you'd be interested in entertaining that idea as we get into the final stages of this plan.
Sure. John Landwehr, I'm on the board of Catholic Charities, and
Give me your address, John, please.
231 Madison Street, Jefferson City, Missouri. We've worked through dozens of issues with the Housing Authority. They've been great partners, and I can't imagine that this will be an issue either right away when we're mobilized with construction, or certainly on the list of things to do. I think it's a great idea. We just have to get with the Housing Authority and work it out.
Great. That's awesome. Appreciate you working with everybody on that. Okay. I'll go back to the commission members. Is there any questions for any of city staff? Seeing none. Okay. At this time, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the request to rezone the property from RA2 to PUD.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'm assuming we need to do the rezoning, then we'll do the plan. Is that correct?
Appears to be two motions.
Yeah, two motion.
Okay. All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 8-0. I will entertain a motion regarding the PUD plan.
So I move to approve the approval of the preliminary PUD plan with the establishment of an underlying zoning of C1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Ian, will this be forwarded to the city council?
Yes, this will be forwarded to the City Council to be heard on April 20th at 6 p.m. here in these chambers.
April 20th at 6 p.m. here in this chambers, unless it's changed.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you. I think at this time we will move on to other business. We have the comprehensive plan work session. Anna, you have kind of been leading that for us. I'm assuming that's you again tonight?
Hi, me again. Okay. So as we've been going through the past couple of months, the commission is the steering committee for the comprehensive plan, and we're currently in the draft stage of developing that plan. So as I've mentioned multiple times, we're having these theme discussions in regards to each chapter of the comprehensive plan to work through the initial research that staff has done and to gauge your guys' perspectives on the information and the contents. So today we're talking about economic development and what we're calling capital, culture, and healthy living. And I'll get more into the definition of that later. So why are we discussing these topics today? Well, a person needs money to fulfill the first bottom two needs of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I've kind of been using this graphic as a tool to, at a high level, signify why these topics are important. And a person needs physical and social or emotional health to achieve the middle two needs, being esteem and love and belonging. So, thus, it is appropriate for us to have two dedicated chapters to both of these topics. First chapter that I'm going to be talking about is capital, culture, and healthy living. What does this mean? Well, as everyone here is familiar with, there are a lot of overlapping themes and issues involved with planning. And this chapter deals with the more accessory planning topics. So things that are still very important, but they're more non-necessity than other chapters like housing or transportation. So this encompasses things that support basic needs, more of the wants that enhance our everyday lives, and equity. So parks, arts, culture, active living. It's very common for other plans to incorporate all of these things together sort of as one package, and that's what we've done. So to cover some of the information that was gathered during the comprehensive plan community engagement process in regards to these topics, Parks and Recreation, 87% of participants believe that quality of life is tied to access of parks, recreation facilities, and open space. The Greenway Trail and Park System was mentioned very frequently throughout our processes, and in the Chamber survey, they have released they're gearing up to produce a strategic plan for their organization, and they also conducted a survey. The park system and Greenway Trail system was also mentioned during that process, and online responders indicated that the top 2 ways that would increase their use of parks and recreation facilities are expanded and connected Greenway Trail and improved quality of equipment in parks and open space. So this is a 2-part prompt. Quality of life in Jefferson City is affected by accessibility to arts and cultural facilities. 75% of participants believe that quality of life is tied to those types of facilities. Participants believe that arts and cultural amenities attract and retain residents. They mentioned during our process that younger people often move to other cities because of those cities' appearance of having more vibrant arts and culture communities compared to Jefferson City. Follow-up discussions. People mentioned that Jefferson City is a good place for families or older populations, but that it is lacking in amenities to keep or attract those younger audiences, maybe singles or people without families. Don't get me wrong, people made sure to mention that they do enjoy the events and the amenities here in Jefferson City, but they just want to see more theater, more art, more music opportunities, things like that. People also mentioned that they wanted to see more creative placemaking opportunities, education on historic preservation, the library being expanded, and avoiding stagnant attitudes and actions. So second part to this prompt, 67% of participants believe that quality of life is tied to access to healthy and locally grown food options. Strengthening this goal could include one farmer's market, possibly a pavilion like they have in Columbia, a quality grocery store in the city center, and more community gardens. Now for some demographics on this sort of wide brushed chapter. Just for a quick preference, that health data is gathered at the county level. So in regards to Cole County, we rank 12 out of the 115 Missouri counties in overall health factors. This includes health behaviors like diet and exercise, clinical care, social and economic conditions, and the physical environment. And this sort of number is supposed to represent things that can be improved to lengthen or the quality of your life in regards to those health factors. Cole County has a 7.5 food environment index score, and the food environment index considers food insecurity and an individual's distance from a grocery store or a supermarket. 0 is the worst score you can get, and 10 is the best. And overall, Missouri has a 6.8, so Cole County is a little bit above average. And overall, since 2007, Cole County has seen a reduction in violent crimes, but since 2014, there's been like a slight tick in violent crimes in Cole County. And then for Jefferson City, 21% of people over the age of 25 have a bachelor's degree, and there are 18 parks and a little over 16 miles of greenway here in Jefferson City. So, on top of what the community has advocated for during our community engagement process, the development of this chapter was also heavily influenced by best practices and the desire for more equitable communities. Equity is the quality of being fair or impartial, regardless of age, sex, race, economic status, religion, disability, etc. And our planning literature and our planning best practices, they advocate for interwoven equity to be throughout a planning document. So for example, this table highlights different metrics that should be identified for planning for healthy communities. The unbolded things on there, which I understand is hard to read on these screens, are issues or opportunities addressed in other parts of the comprehensive plan, and the bolded topics are what's kind of like what's left over again for this chapter. Thus, them all being grouped together. So later when I talk about the draft goals and strategies, you'll see many of these things highlighted. Okay. Oh, wow. This is a lot better. That's a little alarming. So 28% of participants believe that grassroots economic development and revitalization is encouraged in Jefferson City. And like I mentioned, grassroots implies local economic development, and it is fair to say that most people either work for like a government agency or the hospital or like a bigger corporation. So that's kind of showcases why this breakdown could have occurred. But regardless, attendees and stakeholders mentioned their love for downtown and local businesses and supporting entrepreneurship opportunities as much as possible. So I mentioned the Chamber's survey, and I want to highlight a couple of points from their results because I think it's significant into the attitude that some people have here in Jefferson City. So in regards to workforce development in Jefferson City, from the perspective of this Chamber survey, 42% indicate that they have to recruit workers from outside of the Jefferson City area. 40% do not think that they are able to find workers that they need to sustain or grow operations, and 33% think that they have trouble recruiting workers from outside of the Jefferson City area. So people who have no opinion or feel unqualified to answer these questions were prompted to click the don't know or the NA category, but as you can see, a lot of people still chose to comment on this question. So in comparatively, they were also asked to rate their desire to remain in Jefferson City, and 50% indicated that it is likely that they will retire or remain retired in Jefferson City, and 71% indicates that it is likely that they will continue to live in Jefferson City. So we'll kind of talk about what all this stuff could mean a little bit later. Last prompt, 75% of participants believe that Jefferson City's economic success depends on accommodating growth and demand trends. This could be preferences on housing, workplace environment, lifestyles that affect the built environment, or types of job opportunities. Following this prompt, people talked about the convention center, MSP redevelopment, workforce training and education, workforce housing, and heritage and state-themed tourism and Lincoln University partnerships. So what do we need to consider from the public's perspective? Well, people say that they need to attract people to the community for a job, but that it's potentially hard to get people to move here. Yet a lot of people who are established here really want to stay. And we can all agree that growth and demand trends are important, but we need to keep in mind if Jefferson City is or can keep up with those trends. Now on to demographics. Median household income, roughly $50,000. Families below the poverty level, so of the families in Jefferson City, 9.9% of them are below the poverty level. We have a 4% unemployment rate. The state of Missouri has an unemployment rate of 5.9, so we're looking good from that aspect. And then the top 3 industries in Jefferson City, so the most people employed in those industries are education services, healthcare, social assistance, public administration, which that's a bubble that kind of encompasses state government, and then retail. So now I'm going to be going over industry trends from 2000 to now. We see that educational services have been very steady, same with transportation. There's a slight uptick in the transportation/warehousing and utilities industry. That would be around 444 jobs that has people employed in that industry has increased since 2015. We've got the construction and manufacturing industries. The recession appeared to affect the manufacturing industry quite hard, but recently gaining more jobs. And the number of people in the construction industry has declined since 2010. Again, back to that recession thing. And we hear it a lot from our building inspectors that there aren't as many people like in that labor pool as people who they are working with want to see. And to be honest, when I was in school, it's not like they promoted, these two industries very much. So there's like also a social aspect to this decline. Wholesale trade remains constant, and there's a slight increase in retail. There's always a fear that the online purchases, will take away from brick and mortar stores. So at least it's good for me to see that this number hasn't completely plummeted, because there's always that fear. IT and finance. Finance has been pretty steady, and also same with IT, even though unlike the construction and manufacturing situation with the dip during the recession, you can see that there is an uptick in IT in 2010. And I'm not quite sure why that happened, and if anyone has, some details on that, I would love to know. And then this is a snapshot that best encapsulates the state government industry with public administration and this professional science management field. The census categorizes industries very broadly, so bear with me in all of the things that are included with these industries. So as you can see, there has been a decline in the public administration industry since 2000. There are roughly 1,403 people have left this industry since 2000. And that's always a concern that our economy is so dependent on state government work. If it becomes stagnant, what does that look like for Jefferson City? And then another catch-all slide, we have arts and entertainment, other services, which includes repairs, religious activities, grant making, advocacy, laundry, a whole slew of other things, and agriculture. People during our community engagement processes talked about advocating for more arts and cultural opportunities. So it is nice to see this uptick in people in this industry, since people are advocating for more of those opportunities. So overall, through all of these trends, we have to ask ourselves if the comp plan can promote anything to improve any of the economic conditions for any of these industries. And now I am going to talk about inflow-outflow workforce. So Jefferson City is a commuter city where our population increases, very dramatically during the day and then declines in the evening when people go home from work. The census tells us that 76% of people who are employed in Jefferson City live outside the city limits. One big benefit to this, of course, is that Jefferson City is a hub in mid-Missouri for surrounding communities. But one detriment is that there is a loss of public and social goods when you have that level of commuter lifestyle. And the goal of highlighting these situations is to showcase the reasons why we want to further promote Jefferson City as a desirable place to live, to make sure that people have investment opportunities, whether it's residential or commercial, and to create a community with diverse amenities that feed into our economic system. And best practices tell us that when people live and spend lots of money in a community, that breeds the best social and public good situation. Okay, so this is kind of more of a numbers explanation of why there's that strain on public and social goods. So, and this is in particularly important for smaller communities like Jefferson City, because when you have KC or St. Louis, you have more people spread out over multiple communities in a tight bubble to spread those public social goods and costs, whereas in Jefferson City, there's more of like a hard line to that. So this is a little snapshot of Jefferson City, where there are the main contributors to our economic conditions, where there are the revenue mechanisms like property and personal property taxes. They spend a lot of money here. There's also the social and identity factors, where you have more buy-in and you care a lot about the city because you're living directly in here. And this 27,000 number is made up of people who work in Jefferson City, or who live inside Jefferson City and maybe work outside, and people who work in Jefferson City, live in Jefferson City, lives in Cole County, and lives in Summit Township, which is the southern part of Callaway County. And then you have the commuters, so everyone who does not fit into that bubble. They come into Jefferson City, there's a strain on our systems, sidewalk, roads, emergency services, etc., yet they're not giving as much in tax revenue, not as much spending here. They're taking all of that money back to the county where they reside, thus that county is getting benefits. So what can we do about this? So we need to determine if we want to do these things, and is it beneficial for us? So if the benefit of people moving or spending more money here is greater than the cost of taking on those extra residents, then that's socially optimal. And even if any shape or form that number is positive, that's a good thing. So in a hypothetical situation, if we even got a quarter of those commuters to move to Jefferson City, there's going to be additional tax revenue and additional spending here. And yes, there's of course a cost associated with taking on more residents, but theoretically, if we don't sprawl too much in receiving those extra residents, then the public cost per resident goes down. It's like a economies of scale sort of a situation. Okay, So on top of all that, what does that mean for the comprehensive plan? Well, there's a fun document that I found on our American Planning Association's website, which is our professional service, and they focus on, this document focuses on what specifically comprehensive plans should do in regards to economic development, because there's a lot of moving wheels with it. Focus on unique characteristics and assets. So like I've mentioned before, leveraging the things that makes us special is a surefire way to get economic activity into our community. Amenities, job opportunities, lifestyle preferences, etc. Incentives for growth, whether that be regulatory or programming. As a city, we need to really partner with other local stakeholders to create those vibrant economic conditions. And then also the document reminds us that the market-based approach will not fix everything. And remember, this is specifically in regards to the comprehensive plan. So what this means is that there's already a leading, organization for economic development. That's the Chamber. They deal with the market-heavy factors. Do we have enough restaurants? Do we have enough hotels? But the comprehensive plan is supposed to address the associated factors that feed into economic development, because there are a lot of gears moving, and it's going to take everyone working together to improve economic conditions, not just one person or one document. So I know I said a lot, again, really, really quickly, but here are the draft goals and objectives and strategies, the overarching themes to those things, and we want to know if we are correct in focusing on these themes. So in regards to economic development, the ancillary workforce development influences, housing, education, tools that help people function in the workplace. People really want to stay here and work here. Regional connections. Yes, we have a community. Do we have the right transportation connections and amenities to make that a thriving condition here in Jefferson City? And partnerships with institutions and organizations to promote a vibrant community. And investment opportunities. Maybe programs to help businesses thrive, brownfield opportunities, and the transparency in our codes and regulations to make people feel empowered to do that investing. And then in regards to the capital culture and healthy living chapter, cultural enhancements. Cultural enhancements don't just have to mean, like ethnic culture, but, it involves the customs, arts, and social institutions of a particular nation, people, or group. So what is Jefferson City's culture? Should we focus on historic preservation, arts and entertainment, Jefferson City branding? All of the above is what I say. And then parks and recreation. Again, very, very popular here in Jefferson City. It's a very beneficial amenity. We want to keep that ball rolling. And then social and physical health. So more community policing, community events that promote diversity and social interaction, and community gardens, and a farmer's market. I think that would really be good in Jefferson City. So I'll repeat my prompt. Are all of these things correct in us focusing in the comprehensive plan? But also let me know if there's anything else we should focus on, if anything else that I said needs more research. I'm here, yes.
The only thing that I would like to have more clarification on when you said about a commuter city, are the people, are they going to Columbia? Yes, and they're taking their money. I think you'd find the vast majority of the commuters are wanting a rural lifestyle, live in St. Thomas, Watersville, Taos, and all the surrounding. They bring the money right back into Jeff Lease retail, because there is very little retail except the get and goes. I think the only thing you really have to worry about, how many people go into Columbia, and how can you get them here back into Jefferson City. But we're going to have land to develop, and the reason for them, I don't know if there's enough housing stock to bring all the people that are living in Columbia and working in Jefferson City, or living in Fulton and come to Jefferson City. But the rest of the surrounding people, you're not going to get them to come. They like the rural lifestyle. They're living with their parents, they're living with their grandparents, and so. Right. But that's, if you can figure out the numbers going to Columbia every day and what you can do to get them, that might be a trick. But then again, this is Jefferson City. It's not. It's always been this way until we have some kind of high tech job, some type of of a reason for the well-educated to come here, they're not going to do it. We've always had manufacturing, and that's off. It's just the only way you're really going to market Jefferson City to get people to stay here is say, hey, Columbia is 30 miles away. You can go there for a nice lifestyle. You can live here and spend your money here. But if you want all these things, the culture, the arts, you have to go to Columbia. We don't have this population to sustain it. We don't even have a population to sustain an Olive Garden. So, I mean, my gosh, we're not going to have a theater.
Yeah.
That's your goal.
Always bring an Olive Garden after well.
Prefabricated food.
Last thing we need is another restaurant.
Anna,
Yeah.
I had a question. I wrote down, I hope I have this correct, that only 21% of people in our community over the age of 25 have a bachelor's degree.
Correct.
How is that number derived?
I found it on the census website.
On the census, okay.
Correct. And
that sounds really low to me.
And that was just bachelor's degree. There's also a category for advanced degree, which I did not put up there.
Oh,
so that was just reached the level.
So this was just bachelor's. So
Yes.
masters and professional degrees would be on top of this.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, then the other question I had, I wrote down that 9.9% of families were below the poverty level.
Yes.
And that's on the census
Correct.
data also. Again, that seems low to me. I'm just thinking about what I always read about how many children qualify for free and reduced lunch in our school system. And it was shocking to me, the number. I can't remember now, but the number doesn't seem to correlate with this number.
Yes. So, and Sunny, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because this is me remembering from our poverty simulation exercise that we did, but the below the poverty level is a very strict calculation that actually is underestimating people in a community, whereas the free and reduced lunch is a different calculation. So you could be making a single parent home, for example, making $35,000 and qualify for free and reduced lunch, but not be considered under poverty level. Yeah.
So basically, it's definitions.
Yes. Yes.
What is the poverty level income?
I don't know off the top of my head.
We're looking it up.
Okay.
Just didn't know if anybody knew that
Yeah,
off the top of their
it
head.
depends on family size and.
Does it?
Yeah, it
changes
does.
Based on the numbers of, okay.
Well, what did you say statewide poverty level was compared to where we were? 14, 15%.
Did I? Is it on the sheet?
Yeah, it says 13.2.
You know, to some degree, I won't totally agree with everything Mr. Deacon said. I'm not going to judge our community based on restaurants.
People constantly want these cheap restaurants, and we don't have a population.
But you know, I'll let the realtors address this. A number that I heard in the last day or two is that currently in our multi-list system, we have around 300 homes currently listed, which is low, which creates a seller's market, not a buyer's market, which is really, really low, which to some degree obviously says that we need a little more development, which goes back to terrain and annexation. My question is, when is the last time we annexed? I was thinking it was out west, but it's been a while.
My first annexation was my first case here, but it was just annexed a road, but no.
We weren't going to give you a road. We want some land. When was the last reasonable annexation for the city of Jefferson?
2007, the Capitol Hills Route C annexation area, and so a lot of that area off Southridge Drive and just south of St. Mary's Hospital, basically.
And that was voluntary.
No, that was a voter-approved annexation, and so it was a very large area, and so that was the last time we had a large, several neighborhoods, basically, that were annexed into the city. And so sometimes those annexations, if you look at growth over time, it affects those census numbers because, how is Jefferson City growing? Well, there's houses being built, but we're also annexing neighborhoods, and so that gets built into those numbers.
See, we tried to go west, but it got gerrymandered, and I think it got shut down with some of the hotels and then the Apache Flats. And nobody ever wants to touch Westview Heights. That's going to stay county forever.
They tried to do too much
Yeah.
at one time. They went west and Capitol Hills. They were trying to go all around, and it got...
Yeah, it just got crazy, yeah.
So they did well with Capitol Hills.
But Westview Heights will never be annexed. Nobody wants that because it's just too much.
Never seen that.
All right, I won't see it.
There was a voluntary annexation and a little bit of an area out west behind the country club. And voluntary annexations are very problematic because they require a significant number of the property owners to voluntarily sign annexation petitions. And so there are still a few houses out there that did not. And so there's a few holes there. But that was a fairly successful, although it took a lot of staff effort to get a fairly small number of houses, incorporated into the city limits.
I'll say again that, we sit here and we say we want to grow our community, and I believe that and support that, whether it's whatever type of housing or whatever. But again, if we're not going to expand our borders, you're not going to have that opportunity for much more growth. There's just not a lot of property. I think the consultants that were here tonight will tell you, and the developers will tell you, there's just not many places to go. And the places that are left are so hilly and cost prohibitive that's why a lot of them sit there. Now, that's not all the cases, but I guess in all of this, I would encourage you guys as staff members to work with the council and try to promote that. I think planning documents that, putting my old planner hat back on, state that if a community is not growing, it's actually falling in upon itself. And we have not grown since 2007 based on what you tell us, and that's a little alarming. But we do have a lot of issues with terrain and rivers and things like that. So, but
the entire Apache Flats area is just ripe for it. Good schools, a lot of land, developing quickly, nice houses. Nobody wants to say, I hereby need.
Well, I feel like also that number expands the number of the population, and that's what companies look at whenever they come to Jeff City. They want to look at the population. And I think it's kind of a problem that we're having now, I feel, is that you want people to move here, but the jobs aren't good enough. And in order to get the good jobs, you got to have more industry here, but you can't get the industry here because there's not enough people, or the people that work for these industries don't want to live here. And so it's like almost like, how do you get it? Do you just build something and hope somebody comes and build housing and make hopefully somebody comes, or I don't know. It's a tough question. I think you need more education here and the right, expand education, and then once you get the education, the people that go to these schools will live here, and then hopefully it carries out from there.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
It's a tough cycle.
Yeah. Thus, us developing the vision for the future of Jefferson City to sort of like help fill in those holes.
So what are you asking of us at this point? Do any other commission members have any comments or statements? But other than that, what are you asking us of us tonight?
Yeah, are these quality, themes to focus on in the comprehensive plan? Are we missing anything? Or is one of them totally out of line? Let us know. Yeah.
Kind of back at that thing. Has Jeff City or the Chamber or anybody ever done like a hypothetical type of development? You know what I mean? Like, and then maybe present that to people or industry and say, hey, this could potentially happen, and, is that ever?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of what we're working on and what Campo has done for their MTP, where we had a computer simulation show, where could the development go, practically speaking, connected to roads, reasonably flat land, et cetera, to show, okay, here are where the pockets of development could go, and that's one layer of visioning, and then there's what we're doing now, which is big picture. We want to be a community dedicated to community gardens, because that's what we're going to focus on, purely an example, to show the potential that Jefferson City wants, and the plan, it just existing, shows that the community and stakeholders are on board with said vision. So,
it's kind of like coming from, an architect point of view, or even a commercial leasing, what I do. You have a building there, people really won't look at it unless you say, hey, this is what it could be, and you put it on paper, and you make it look all good, and then they're like, oh, wow, maybe this would work. So
that's this process.
There you go.
So
one of the best, I don't want to call it a comprehensive plan, but a development plan that I've seen in the last few years is the one that Capital Region presented to us
another
just
good
a couple
example.
of years ago. I don't know, Emily, if you've ever seen that, but it was really, really neat, the ideas that they took around the hospital and took the communities in with it. And some of that now may happen unfortunately, because of the tornado in those areas, but talked about upgrading, the expressway and some of those other roads and things like that. It was very impressive to your point. If anything like that would ever happen, if there was enough dollars and things like that, that's what would, I think, start a trend occurring. It's babies. It's a great document, like a lot of people say, it's a document. You can put it on a shelf, and you hope someday that maybe somebody will pull it off the shelf and start using it, because it was incredible. And if you ever get that opportunity, take a look at it.
Yeah, I agree. I think on a smaller scale, the MSP plans, or at least one of them, look promising. I mean, as concept, and then I know only part of that would be funded from what we have, but then going forward, that could really develop that area of the city and bring and retain people.
I agree, and we've seen those plans for a long time. Again, somebody needs to take action.
I also agree, too, with the art part of it. I feel like Jeff City is kind of needs something here that is magnificent. I don't know what that is yet. Like the Bean in Chicago.
Yeah.
Or, Statue of Me.
Yeah.
Jack, sell your real estate if we do that. So at this point, I think Anna is asking for us, do we think that our draft goals, objectives, and strategies are reasonable and can continue down that path, I think is what you're asking of us this evening.
No objections? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want to put a community garden on High Street, we have a $200,000 lot y'all can use.
Oh, yeah.
Just saying. Okay. Staff updates on prior cases.
The city council will hear a case this coming Monday, the one that was approved previously on this last Friday. That was the one that was about the JCMG Surgical Center that is being proposed on Edgewood and Harper's Ferry. And that is it.
Okay. Do any commission members have anything else from city staff or anything? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming this evening.